Episode 16 fades in on a stark red White Fang symbol graffitied on a stone wall, next to a detailed White Fang mask aching to atoms, before a wet sponge wipes across it. We pull out to show Jaune, who is staring at the symbol, and says, should we tell Blake about this? Nora comments, I'm pretty sure she doesn't like them. Jaune shrugs. I mean, I know that, but this feels wrong? Tell me I'm right, Ren. We look to Ren, who is staring at a grandiose faunus street art mural, and he looks to the two. I think I agree with Jaune. Nora shrugs, saying, well, it doesn't bother me, before pulling out a sandblaster and starting it up with a manic grin. Jaune double takes and says, Nora, what did I say about the sandblaster? Nora reluctantly turns it off and groans. Come on, this is so boring! At least Yang got dock work today. This feels like we're doing Cordovan's busy work. Jaune rolls his eyes. It's not that bad, Nora. And she returns, Ruby gets a scooter! Jaune retorts, she had to rent one, her leg's broken. Ren adds, it's just a fracture, actually. Jaune groans, it's still broken. Nora continues, look, all I'm saying is I feel Team RWBY has it good. Jaune pauses while he's scrubbing, but picks it back up as he talks. Actually, they don't. I talked to Blake the other day, and things, well, they're not bad, but apparently the trip to that old Huntress's place didn't go very well. Nora goes back to scrubbing, slowly, but comments, I didn't realize. They've seemed fine. I mean, beyond all the stuff with Oz, but we're all dealing with that. Ren adds idly, Roman and Neo still haven't returned. Jaune nods curtly and says, good. Nora looks up to Jaune, concerned, asking, but aren't RWBY going to need him when they go to Atlas? Jaune is silent, conflicted, but goes back to work. They're resourceful. I'm sure they'll figure something out. He raises his sponge but lowers it again, sighing, let's take a break. We've been at this for a while. Jaune comes down the ladder he's on, and the three head towards a low wall where they sit down for a break. As they do, a passing figure stops its route, walking up to them, and we hear, well, funny running into you three. Our trio looks up to find Hel and Nico smiling down at them. Jaune blinks, jumps to his feet, and they exchange warm greetings. She looks at their work in progress and says, shame about the art. The graffiti ruins it. Jaune looks up silently to the mural, but before he can say anything, Helen takes control of the conversation. Have you guys eaten yet? Jaune says, no, it's alright, ma'am, when Ren's stomach growls, and he looks thoroughly embarrassed in front of her. Helen smiles and says, sounds like someone begs to differ. She motions down the street and says, we're just around the corner. Come on, please, let me treat you. It's the least we could do. Jaune looks between the wall, Helen, Ren, and finally Nora before saying to Helen, you know what? That sounds nice. We cut to the Nikos household with the sound of a closing door, and Helen calling out, honey, we have guest! In response we hear, guest? And poking out around a corner is a surprisingly average-looking dude. Nothing special or stand out, maybe he's a bit on the bigger, buffer side of things, but yeah, it turns out Pyrrha's dad is just a dude. Helen steps out of the way and waves to the three, saying, these are Pyrrha's friends from Beacon. I told you how I ran into them the other day. Well, I did it again today and dragged them home. Troy steps out fully, wearing an apron, and holds out his hand to Jaune first, introducing himself. I'm Troy Nikos, Pyrrha's father. Jaune awkwardly takes his hand and says, I'm Jaune, and Troy cuts him off, boisterously declaring with a teasing edge, Jaune Arc, short, sweet, rolls off the tongue, ladies love it. Jaune gets only a moment to blink before Troy has moved on to pull Nora and Ren deeper into the house. And you must be Nora, and you must be Lai. They're pulled towards a hallway, Nora unusually silent as Ren corrects, I actually go by Ren. Troy apologizes jovially. Oh, sorry, my mistake. You can only tell so much through letters and phone calls. Troy looks to Helen and hands his apron to his wife. Here, Hel, I got it started for you. Helen pouts playfully and takes the apron, muttering, yes, Chief, before doing a salute and walking into the kitchen. Troy waves them into the living room. Well, come on, I've been thinking about what to show you if you came over. The four sit down and were treated to a pleasant conversation reminiscing about Pyrrha, about her time at Beacon and the shenanigans she got into with Juniper and Team RWBY. Most of the dialogue flows from Jaune and Ren, while Nora is notably less chatty. She still says things from time to time, especially when prompted, but it's clear that she lacks the energy she normally has. As the conversation goes on, the questions focus less on Pyrrha and more on Jaune, Ren, and Nora. The married couple slowly become more concerned with the three's safety after learning about them walking across the continent, being in Mistral during the coup attempt, and the attack on the train. The three wave it off as part of the job, and the couple share a concerned look before Helen dispels the awkward air by suggesting they go eat. As they eat, Troy, to lighten the mood, questions the group if they know how Pyrrha discovered her semblance. The three all guess it wrong, suggesting some kind of heroic feat or intense training. Helen dispels that by explaining that one morning when Pyrrha was 12, she saw a spider, and a second later she was covered head to toe in silverware. Helen even burnt her hand catching a searing hot skillet before it hit her daughter. Troy sighs ruefully that after that, Pyrrha was never a big fan of pancakes. We cut to Roman in a library, flipping through several stacks of books. With an exasperated sigh, he slumps back into the chair, throwing a book onto the table. The book lands and we can clearly see the author's name is Ozpin. Across from him is Neo, reading comic books, and she looks up with a raised brow as he groans. "This is impossible. Half these damned books are written by that old coot and the rest don't know what the hell they're talking about." He springs forward, looking over all the books, saying, "Who knew there was so little written about ancient wizard wraiths from before the beginning of time?" Neo puts down her comic and waves a hand towards him. He groans in response. "Oh, I'm having a ball here. Can't you tell I'm just having the time of my life?" Neo levels a glare at him and he shoots back. "I'm not pouting." Her brow raises and he quickly adds, "I'm not delusional either. If he can get in, I can get him out." Neo signs to him, and he replies, "They're useless, Neo. We're not going back just because you're soft on Blondie." Again, Neo glares, and he says, "Look, they're an endearing bunch, sickeningly so, but we gotta go back to thinking for ourselves. Cut ties, fresh start. I'm thinking we head back to Mistral, set up shop in all the chaos back there. By the end of the year, we could own that town." Neo replies by throwing her magazine in his face. Roman blinks and says, "Okay, little Miss Smartass, what's your suggestion?" Neo signs and he drops his head to the table in frustration. "You're like a broken record, we don't owe them anything." Neo makes a couple of gestures and there's a long pause before Roman realizes he needs to actually look at Neo to know what she's saying. He raises his head and says, "Sorry, wasn't listening, say that again." Neo huffs and signs again, a long complex thought, expressing that the best hope they have for getting rid of Ozpin isn't sitting in a public library in Argus. Traveling with the others to find the relics is the best chance they have. Roman is quiet, his mouth floundering to find words before his face falls into his hands. Quietly, he admits, "I don't know if I can do that, Neo. I thought it'd be better if he went away, but did he? There are times I wonder." He looks up into Neo's eyes. "I don't know, I've never not been me." A moment later, a full book hits Roman in the face. He recoils, gripping his forehead, saying, "Ah! That one was an almanac!" He winces as he looks up to find Neo angry but teary-eyed. Neo signs to him that she will stop at nothing to separate him from Oz. Nothing. Roman unwinds from his recoil and stares at her with parted lips before smiling. He hangs his head and sighs. "Fine," he says flatly. "We'll go back." He stands and looks to the books before waving at them and muttering, they'll pick them up later." He offers a hand to Neo, and as she stands, he asks, "How much cash do you have on you?" A special thanks goes out to all of my wonderful patrons for supporting the channel. If you like this content and want more of it, please consider supporting it. Also consider picking up my new action-adventure novel, The Artificer, which is now available for purchase on Amazon in digital and in print. With that all said, back to your regularly scheduled fixing. We cut back to the Nikos dining room/kitchen where the meal has just been finished. The table is littered with empty plates and Troy is taking the used dishware to be cleaned. Jaune, reading the mood, takes a breath and leans forward, steepling his fingers before saying, I want to apologize to you. Both of you." Troy slows and Helen looks at Jaune with concern. Jaune continues, "I tried to keep her safe and I couldn't. I failed and I couldn't even bring you back something to remember her by." Ren rests a hand on Jaune's back. "We're all sorry." Nora, to the side, is completely silent, her eyes sunken. Helen and Troy look at the three and their somber moods, when Helen leans over and puts a hand over John's, saying, "Let us show you something." We cut to a dark room, light spilling in through an opening door before Troy reaches out and flicks on the lights. We're greeted to Pyrrha's room, which is Spartan, to say the least. Come on, people, I'm trying. This entire volume has been way more streamlined. I can't make as many jokes as I used to. More seriously, her room is rather basic, hosting minimal decoration, though there are enough present to tell that yes, Pyrrha was a teenage girl. Most notably, there's a single boy band poster carefully framed and tactfully placed on one of her walls, among other things like plushies on her bed. As the team breaks out through the room, Jaune is pulled in the direction of an umbrella stand on the ground. Inside rest a number of javelins of different makes and sizes, as well as a leather shield tucked between it and a dresser. Helen explains, "You didn't need to bring us her belongings. We have all the memories we need. But you did bring us something. You came here, the friends we know she treasured." In the foreground of the shot, blurred by focus, is Nora sulking by the closet, her shoulders beginning to tremble. Troy adds, "She always wanted to have friends over, and in some ways it kind of feels like she got what she wanted." As Troy trails off, Nora growls out, "Why aren't you angry?" All heads turn towards her and she snaps around to face them. "You don't know what kind of friends we were. You just met me. I was petty. I hated her. Ren interrupts, rushing to Nora's side and saying, "You didn't hate her, Nora." And she snaps back, shoving him off. "I might as well have, Ren. Everything I said." Nora begins to tear up and she leans against the wall. "She hated me. And I don't blame her." Everyone stares at Nora, Jaune and Ren moving in to help her. Helen and Troy share a glance and a nod. Troy heads out of the room while Helen approaches Nora and grabs her by the hands. "Come over here and sit with me." The two sit on Pyrrha's bed and Ren falls to Nora's side. Jaune sits beside him as Troy re-enters the room, carrying a bundle of letters. He hands them to Helen and comments, "Pyrrha was always kind of traditional about it." Helen pats Nora on the back until she takes the letters and holds them up for the kids to see. Helen takes the first letter and begins to read. "Dear Mom and Dad, my first day at Beacon has been pretty uneventful." And we smoothly fade into Pyrrha's voice reading her own letters as we get snippets of her time at Beacon with Team RWBY. Accompanying this narration are photographs printed out by Pyrrha of different events they all experienced. Notable events include being made an official team, pancake social time with Juniper and Ruby, the Jaune dress shenanigans, the team collapsed on the ground after an intense training session, and a tea party with Weiss. The narration begins to wind down before we reach the final letter of the pile, as Pyrrha's voice comes through clearly.
"Sorry I haven't written in a bit. I've been busy lately with the tournament and some other things. Nora got mad at me today. I should be focusing on the tournament, but I've never fought with my friend before. I don't know what I should do. Ren says she needs time to herself, but I don't know. I keep feeling like I should go to her, but I wouldn't know what to say. I'm scared. I'll listen to Ren for now and give her time. When she's ready, I hope she'll want to talk to me again. Mom, when you and Auntie Cass got into fights, how did you make things right?"
Helen's voice begins to fade in. I know it's a shorter but Helen stops when she hears sobbing. Nora next to her has started to cry openly, doubling over into her hands and wailing loud and pained sobs. Ren is already rubbing Nora's back, but Helen puts the letters aside and leans in to hug Nora. Nora leans into the hug and wails into Helen's shoulder. We fade out to later that night, back at the Anima Arc residence where Jaune is sitting by himself on the back patio, staring at one of the Polaroids. The picture is of Juniper and Ruby having their pancake social, and Jaune's eyes drift over him, Pyrrha, Ren, and Nora. He smiles softly before his eyes drift over to Team RWBY and his smile fades. He exhales and lowers the photo, revealing his scroll where an application for a registered Huntsman license sits unsigned. Jaune stares at it for a second before hitting cancel, closing his scroll, standing and walking away, leaving the scroll on the table behind him. We drift up to one of the house's bedroom windows, and inside we find Ren laying down for the night. Behind him, Nora approaches him, unusually timid. Ren faces her and asks if something is wrong, and Nora quietly asks, would it be alright if we sleep like we used to? When we were kids? Ren's expression softens, and wordless, he moves over to give Nora the space to slip in beside him. She does, and curls into his back. There is silence for several seconds before Nora's quiet crying can be heard. She presses her face into Ren's back, and Ren waits only a moment before turning around and embracing her. And the episode fades to black.